Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today's episode is all about doing quality fiberglass work, and more specifically, we're going to be doing some quality fiberglass work on our stringers here in our 21-foot project boat. Now, we've chosen as our core material some 26-pound density Coosa board, and we're going to be using 3 layers of a 1708 biaxial fabric as our reinforcement. And we're going to be using some high quality vinyl ester resin, which in my opinion is the best for these kind of repair jobs. But to get good quality glass work, a lot of times there's time involved in quality preparation. So a lot of times people want to skip right forward to the glass, they skip the prep work, and then they wonder why their glass work doesn't look primo. So let's talk about a couple of those items before we actually jump right into wetting out the glass. Now, one of the things you can do is, you notice we've already got some of our glass pre-cut, trimmed, and staged and ready to go. So planning out your work and anticipating how many layers of glass you're going to need. Matter of fact, for example, you can see over here on the gunnels, we've got an assortment of widths and enough to do the job that we've got planned. Now, we've also prepped this Coosa board surface. We have primed it with some of the vinyl ester resin. We have used a thickened structural putty from Fiberglass Warehouse, and we've put a really nice radius or fillet in there, and then we have sanded that with some 40 grit paper on just one of these little 3M blocks. Now, laminating resin will gum up your paper. It's not uncommon, but it's going to be enough just to put a good scratched surface on there. The structural putty we're using is also a vinyl ester, which is going to be super strong, pre-thickened, pre-made. We have another little trick that we've shown in some previous videos where we actually use a Ziploc bag. We load some of that in there, and then you can use something like a little spatula from your home store and put a beautiful fillet or radius in there. Now, one thing we will do additionally sometimes is we will also wipe down or go over the surface with some acetone. Want to be sure to wear a respirator, eye protection, gloves, and all that stuff. We may spray it on there with a Zep sprayer and then hit it with a terry cloth towel just to clean and dry the surface a bit. Now, I know we are going into the winter months, and one more thing that you can do is use like a little Wagner heat gun or heat source. I like to put it on a piece of PVC, and you can cover a lot of ground and you're not bending over, stooped over the whole time. So as I get older, the easier we can make this, the better. And sometimes this is kind of one of those things where you can actually warm up that surface, do your fiberglass work, and then even come back and warm it up slightly to put the glass in the range of curing, which typically high 50s is about the minimum. And that's kind of where we are today. So let's go ahead and get ready to jump in there. Now, again, I went ahead and cut and staged and prepped this glass. We're going to be starting at the transom and working our way forward. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put these right here on the gunnels. And you'll notice I even put a little arrow on there to show proper orientation so that when we get ready to actually laminate, we can jump right to it. And if you're new to the channel, I want to welcome everybody. My name is Joe Buskins. I'm a second-generation professional boat builder and a 100-ton licensed U.S. Coast Guard captain. This is our family's boat shop. That is our charter boat that we built here custom just for our charter business here in the shop. We've got well over 150 videos currently devoted to the DIYers out there that want to build, make, repair with composites and fiberglass. So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. So let's jump over to our mixing table, and we're going to be in and out of the boat a lot during this. That's kind of one of the things. If you've got a helper that can work with you and hand things back and forth. My dad, when I was growing up, he called me a gopher. You go for this and you go for that. So that's a big help sometimes. Sometimes you just need somebody there for moral support as well. Now, again, talking about preparation, we have our table set up with the resin we're going to be using. We've got our rollers prepped and ready, mixing cups. Everything's ready to go. Now, one of the fundamentals of dealing with resins is typically we want to be sure to agitate it or mix it a bit before application. Secondly, we want an idea of what temperatures we're going to be dealing with, because that is going to have a factor on how much of the MEKP, or methyl ethyl ketone peroxide, or in layman's terms, just hardener, how much of that. So basically, the colder it is, the more catalyst we're going to need, up to a certain percent. Generally, we work around 2% in cooler weather. You can go upwards of 3% if you really have to. Well, let's see what we've got for temp going on right now. 15 degrees Celsius, or about 59 degrees Fahrenheit, which is absolutely fine. We're just going to kick it up a little bit with our catalyst, a little bit what I call spicy. So as a general rule of thumb, when you're mixing your resin, I like a mixing cup that's going to show your ounces. Generally, we're going to hold 32 ounces max, and about 30 at a comfortable range to make it where we can stir it without sloshing it over the edges there. Now, one of the great things about vinyl ester, very strong, bonds very well, but it's not as finicky as epoxies can be as far as your mixing ratio. So there's a little bit of range there, and sometimes people suffer from analysis paralysis with getting into this kind of work because they overcomplicate it. But there's a little bit of wiggle room there with working with this material, so just keep that in mind. But as a rule of thumb, you can take your ounces of material you're using, let's say that's going to be 30 ounces, and 15 cc's would be about in the middle of what you might need. But I want to go a little hotter, a little bit spicier, so I'm going to use my little squeeze graduated dispenser here. Now this again is the MEKP, or methyl ethyl ketone peroxide, and we're going to go with about 20 cc's in our catalyst. Now, a good respirator or mask, eye protection, gloves, always a good idea. This particular mask is from 3M, and they make really good products across the board. If you're interested in any of the products we're using and the tools and materials, be sure to check out below our video's description. We've got a very nice Amazon page or Amazon store for all the tools and supplies. And then Fiberglass Warehouse offers a substantial Fish Bump TV discount code for our viewers. So be sure to check out Fiberglass Warehouse and mention Fish Bump TV for some savings. So generally, I will tell people, if you're new to this, about 100 rotations. I like to go left, like to go right. Sometimes you're trying to turn it so that you're bringing it up from the bottom to the top. And be sure to scrape the edges thoroughly. A lot of these resins will change color. The vinyl ester specifically kind of goes from a more of a purple or pink to a brown in tone, and will develop some little bubbles in there, but that is completely and absolutely normal. Or you could say about 1 minute of mix time would be appropriate. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. Want to be sure to clean off your stirring stick. Even though you don't have to be ridiculously accurate with this, the cups and the metered dispenser for your MEKP do make a big difference in making things flow nicely. Now, people that have been following the channel know that we're just using a 3/8 snap standard, just an economical, inexpensive roller. Doesn't have to be anything super fancy. And I like to wrap them in tape, and you can see all the excess hairs that'll pull off. That'll keep the hairs from getting in your fiberglass work. We're going to be using a roller and a brush. We're trying to do this as quickly and as efficiently as possible, and a roller is going to help you do that. And I want to be sure we don't track any dirt or debris into the boat. And we've got everything here ready to go. And I'm going to slide this down my work tray a little closer to where I'm going to be wetting out. And generally we will go with a full quart at a time. Seems to be a workable amount. That is probably one of another mistake that beginners may make, is they mix too much at one time. And if you mix too much, you may not be able to get it all worked out before it starts to activate or harden. Generally in hot weather, you've only got about 15 minutes or so. In colder weather, which is why I love working this time of the year, you've got considerably longer, probably 30 minutes or so of working time. So that can be really advantageous. Now, we are in a wide open shop right now, and we've got a lot of good airflow. That can be another factor. Some fans, some doors being open, and plenty of ventilation, because these materials can be quite strong. And we're going to go ahead and get a little bit of resin on the surface, that first area that we plan to coat with our narrowest piece of 1708 first. There are varying opinions on, do you start with the widest first and work your way in, but our family and our shop's been operating since the 60s, always gone from smallest to largest, and that's going to generally give you a really nice clean seam. It's going to minimize the amount of seams that you see, and it just does a really, really nice job. And we've never had any problems going from smallest to largest. Also, again, very important to have that really nice radius or radii in those corners. Fiberglass does not like hard, sharp corners or transitions. We've taken a little notch out of the end, or what my dad called a pleat, so that when we go in the corner here, we won't have a pucker or a fold. You'll get a really nice transition. And even you can see my little marks here where we've got our orientation. Prior to wetting out the floor there, we did what I call a dry fit. Rubber gloves, latex gloves, or these are, we've actually got double gloves on right now for protection. So we got the more of a chemical resistant and a latex glove underneath. That's going to be super helpful. Load that roller once again. And I generally like to start right down in the corners and really tuck that in. You can see the resin coming out of that roller. And just get some resin on the cloth first. Don't worry about it being perfect initially. Go ahead and load your roller up with plenty of resin and get it in there nice and saturated. It's going to take a minute for the cloth to go transparent and really kind of melt down in there, which is kind of what it does. A lot of these fabrics will have some binders in them or chemicals that kind of help hold them together, and the solvents in the resin will help dissolve those. Now I'm also going to use a combination of a brush, sometimes in these corners brushing, or what my dad called dabbing. I've had some people comment and they said they refer to it as stippling or stifling, but whatever floats your boat, man. Whatever you want to call it, just as long as we call it good. Do a quality lamination, and it will go more and more transparent. So a lot of times you'll get that in there and it will go easier and easier to see through, or it will develop transparency. So I'm going to be right back. Another little trick that we use in doing quality lamination work is a little grooved roller or a bubble buster. And a lot of times we will keep 5 gallons of acetone in a bucket. That's what we'll use to keep things clean and tidy and nice. Now, folks, I've grown up in a boat shop and have probably developed a little bit of tolerance for the smell of this stuff. I know I get a lot of comments as far as wearing respirators and protective gear. You definitely should. Acetone can be strong smelling, but that's pretty typical as far as a solvent. I've had some people ask about other solvents. Are they good or not, like denatured alcohol? And there are some other solvents that can work just fine, but I prefer acetone, and that's kind of what we grew up using here in the shop, and it's readily available, fairly inexpensive. Now this little bubble buster will help you work the air out of the fabric and work the resin in, and especially on that initial bond, I think that is one of the secrets to quality glass work. Now we've done a little bit of rolling here. Typically what I would do is just go right back in my bucket. We've got about a gallon or so of acetone along with some of my other tools, and the lid on there minimizes smells and evaporation, so it kind of maximizes the use of our material there. So one more little pass with the brush. Sometimes the brush can be hard to beat when it comes to getting glass to work down in a corner. Just as easy as that, one layer down. Now this is very important in my opinion, is staggering or layering your material. We don't want to cut pieces all the same width, all the same shape. You want to stagger these or offsets. You'll notice I actually offset this by 8 inches or so. And again, don't let the little details, little tiny details, keep you from moving forward. Sometimes people expect perfection with this kind of stuff. I promise you, factory built boats, there's a lot of little variations. You can have your joints can be 6 inches, they could be 4 inches, they could be 8 inches, they could be a foot, so on and so forth. Just as long as you don't have all your joints lining up on the same spot, because that could create a weak point. And on the width, it's the same deal. We don't want what we call a hard point. We want a nice smooth transition so that the load applied to the bottom of the boat is kind of nice and gradual rather than in just one hard edge. Same deal, load up our roller. And if you can have 2 people doing this, where when I was growing up, when our family were building big boats, we would have one person cutting glass, one person mixing and applying resin, and another person actually rolling everything out and working the bubbles. So we worked in like a team of 3. And again, for you DIYers out there, if you can trade some beer and pizza for some of your buddies, maybe owe you a favor. get all the help that you can. And there's no problem with having some extra hands. Certainly normally when we were doing this, if we were doing boat building and not filming, I would have my son, who's behind the camera, I would have him down here helping roll and mix. But it can go pretty smoothly if you plan out your work and start with smaller projects. Now a transom or stringer replacement is a pretty large project as far as things go. And I've had a lot of people that we've been talking through our Patreon service here lately. We've been working with a lot of folks with Patreon, and if they've never done fiberglass work, I highly recommend just getting some materials and experimenting a little bit with using them, working them, mixing some, just kind of toy around with it a little bit and get a little bit of comfort there, and then start with something smaller. If you got a project that has multiple aspects of it, don't start with the hardest part first there, folks. Start with the easy stuff, work your way up to the more difficult ones. So same deal, roller wets things out. A lot of times I like to come in there with the brush and really work it back and forth, dab it into the corners. That initial bond is important, but again, don't let it take the fun out of this for you. You can see here the transition by the smaller one. You can see the second layer going over, it kind of blends and smooths it out. If you did it in reverse order, you would see every seam and every edge. If you do it smallest to largest, you generally end up with a cleaner looking laminate. And we like that, even if it's underneath the floor and it's not going to be seen. Most of this is not going to be seen. Still want to do quality work, be proud of what we do. All right, last piece. You notice we're getting wider and wider. We're covering more and more. Now, before I put that on, one more thing I always highly suggest is getting some resin underneath. So I'm going to go all the way to the top of our stringer. And we are not going to be capping the stringer. So we're not going to be wrapping over it. I haven't found that to be necessary at all, and it just complicates the work, in my opinion. When we put this new floor down on top of this Coosa, we're going to use some 5200 stainless steel nails. The quality of the vinyl ester resin and the prep we've done on this is going to be plenty good without having to wrap the top of the stringers. So that's just my personal opinion. If you want to wrap your stringers, by all means, but just remember, you need to put a really nice soft radius or radii over the top of it, or else your glass will not go over these sharp, hard corners. All right, you can see again, just staggering back, nice and easy. We've pleated our back end piece here, using our gloved hands to kind of tuck it in, nice and neat. We want to be sure to get every bit of our resin between batches. We don't want to cross-contaminate, so we try to use every bit of the resin from one batch to the next. Always in the corners first. Get a little bit of resin in there, because the corners and the edges are typically going to be the most challenging parts to get to lay down. So let's start with those first. All right, the brush can be very handy pulling that into place. You can see we're kind of moving things. Sometimes it can take a little bit of authority there, a little bit of force. This stuff is pretty resilient. Not nearly as intimidating to work with as a lot of people think it is. With a little bit of practice, you can be doing transoms, floors, stringers, saving those old boats that just need a little bit of TLC. Now for you folks that get into major projects and you need something beyond the help that our videos offer, we do offer Patreon services as well, which is like a paid monthly consulting, and you can have direct access to me via phone call. You can send emails of the projects and pictures you're working on, and I can help you directly. So I also want to thank all of our Patreons that are supporting the channel. Again, it helps us do these kind of projects, because a lot of people maybe not be aware, but this boat we're working on is purely for the channel. This isn't a paying customer. This isn't a boat that I necessarily need, but it was one that needed a transom, floor, stringers, and we're getting a lot of requests for that information. So we're doing it just for you folks at home. But I just want to thank everybody for your support and encouragement of the channel. It means a lot to us. Okay, so we're almost done. We're almost done with that batch, and I want to take my roller and really clean out the pan before we go mix another. Back and forth, left and right. And then what I'm going to do is get that resin out of my roller on this drier fabric. Work it out of there. We do not want the roller to be loaded with this batch of resin, because the clock has already started ticking with this resin. We mix a new batch. We want to get as long a life as possible. So that's pretty good there, folks, and we'll let that just kind of simmer for a minute. Sometimes your brush will have a little bit at the top of it. Sometimes you can scrape out a little bit. Not a whole lot there to worry about. Same deal for your mixing cup. Sometimes there's a little bit at the bottom. I always want to be absolutely sure that we get as much of the residual resin out, or you can just start with a fresh mixing cup. But I find that you can typically go 2 or 3 batches, is what we typically call it, before you have to change brushes and rollers. So from this point, it's a little bit of just rinse, wash, repeat. But I'm going to run through to the end of at least this one, and then we'll show y'all more as the lamination progresses. I have found that generally on a boat about this size, that the taller inside stringers need about a gallon and a half or so of resin, maybe close to 2 gallons. Smaller stringers, narrower stringers on smaller boats may get away with about a gallon or so. Remember our chart here, this is kind of our cheat sheet, shows you as a general guideline, ounces, like 4 ounces would be 1.25 to 2.5 cc's of catalyst, and then so on and so forth. Or if you just remember, half the ounces of the material. So 30 ounces of resin, about 15 or 16 ounces of or cc's of catalyst. But we are going a little spicier since it's a little on the cool side. And I have had a lot of practice at this, so I generally can move pretty fast. The more you do this, the better you're going to get at it. So don't be discouraged if your first attempt, it doesn't look exactly like we do. We do it. Grown up in a boat shop, my dad taught me well. My brother's a boat builder. Come from a family of captains, fishermen, boat builders. So just practice is going to help you get better and better. You notice this time I'm kind of turning the cup, rotating the cup as I stir. There are different methods that can work. I generally always like to at least go around the edges one time really, really well, then turn from the bottom to the top. Oh yeah, looking good. Clean off your blade. And again, if you have some help, you could have somebody here at the table mixing the next batch when you're getting close to completing wetting out a batch. Let's see here. All right. Tell you what, you'll also get your exercise, folks. Getting in and out of these boats is good. It'll keep you limbered up. Very important also to watch your step. Obviously, fiberglass can be surprisingly slick. So you would not want to step on wet glass for obvious reasons. It would mar or damage the glass potentially, and you could find yourself laying in the bottom of the boat. So just be mindful, be careful in that respect. Always want to be mindful of that. We'll put my respirator on here a little bit. Hopefully y'all can hear me. Love to hear what kind of projects y'all are working on at home as well. So feel free to comment down below. And if you haven't subscribed, go ahead, please hit that subscribe button. It really, really helps the channel. Okay, here we go. More resin on the roller and then on our surface. Now in a minute, when I get this last layer done, I'm going to show you a little trick to really make things look nice and pretty. Oh my goodness. We got all kind of noise going on this afternoon. Folks, my apologies. We got sirens and dogs barking. Normally it's nice and quiet, but not this afternoon. All right. It's looking good. These bigger, taller pieces are going to consume considerably more resin. You'll notice I'm going up, down, left and right, back and forth. Really working that glass, that resin into the glass is what we want. Oh yeah. Looking good, looking good. Back to our brush. Kind of dab it into these corners and edges. The brush can be hard to beat. Basically, we do not want to see pockets of air or white areas that would indicate a hollow or a void. Brush does a nice job. You can even kind of shift. Sometimes I will use the brush and you can kind of tuck or push. If you see a void or an air pocket, you can shift or move the resin and shift or move the glass in such a way that you can eliminate that little pocket of air. Yes, sir. It's looking very nice. Now back to our little bubble buster roller. That acetone, sometimes people ask the questions if it'll hurt anything coming straight from the bucket. Absolutely not. It doesn't appear to bother or hurt anything. There we go, up, down, back and forth. Start at the corner, work your way out, back in. Corners can be tricky sometimes. Sometimes you'll get a little bubble in there and you may have to go back to the brush. The brush can be surprisingly effective at pulling air out of those corners for you. All right. Back to the brush one more time. My cameraman, it's tricky to work in here, folks, so be sure to comment, tell Logan he's doing a great job. I think he is. It's not that easy sometimes doing this. All right, that's looking quite nice. Now, a lot of times I may leave the 1708 just exposed as is, like up underneath the floor here or the stringers. Cosmetically, it's okay to kind of see this rougher textured finish. But a lot of times back here in the bilge area where you may occasionally open up a compartment and look in here, and if you want it to look more finished and look nicer, there are a couple things you can do, and I got a couple tricks up my sleeve. One of the things I like to do a lot of times, say for example, you can compare this side that we did the other day. You can see these hard, kind of crisp edges. It doesn't really hurt anything, but sometimes it doesn't look that great. And if you want it to look a little more finished, you can use a little bit of CSM. You can use a little bit of the chopped strand mat. And I like to feather or tear the edges so that it kind of blends or transitions. And let's just say we kind of want to clean up those seams. And it does add some strength, but CSM pound for pound is not near as strong as your 1708 biaxial. But it is very good at initial bonding, and it is very good at waterproofing and weatherproofing. And it's also very good, in my opinion, what I would just call cosmetically. You can see how just putting that piece of CSM, if you look at the difference in the seams and edges versus you put the CSM on there, it kind of blends and hides and covers those, and you just get a nicer look. You can come over that one more time with the hard roller and surface it. That's one of those tricks of the trade. Really get some really nice glass work, and it just seems to help the biaxial lay down a bit. All right, so again, side by side comparison. Seams, edges, CSM, much cleaner. Now, if we want to take it one more level, one more step, I'm going to use a piece of peel ply. I've already measured this. I got a little orientation the way I want it to go. I just want to demonstrate what you can do to take it to the next level if you want to. I'm going to use our brush just to kind of think about people that do wallpaper or window tint. Would probably be naturals at this. I sincerely apologize about the neighbor's dog barking there, folks. That's one of the things sometimes you don't think about when it comes to making videos. We usually try to video when the dog is not out barking, but that is actually can be a challenge. It can be a challenge sometimes. It's late in the day and we were trying to get this done, but I appreciate y'all hanging in there and bearing with me on that one. So you can see now I'm just kind of using the brush. Now we're going to try to get as many wrinkles out of that as we can, but that'll significantly smooth the CSM down. You just want to be sure if you're using peel ply to leave an edge that you can grab onto and peel it off. After this is cured, you can come back like the next day and remove that peel ply, that film, and the fiberglass underneath will be substantially smoother. It'll be, matter of fact, if we come up here to the front of the boat, I put a piece of peel ply over this last piece of biaxial that we did the other day. And you can see this is kind of like some biaxial without the peel ply. And then right here in this little strip, I did a little band of the peel ply. That also allows your resin to dry 100% tack free, so it won't be sticky at that point. So if you need to sand it or if you wanted to put gel coat right over that after removal of your peel ply, you got that as a option. So I would seriously recommend putting a little bit of peel ply in your kit if you're interested in getting into this kind of work. So now at this point, I can move forward. And we've got these joints are staggered. We're gonna load our roller, get some more resin going, and we're always gonna be working one layer ahead with the thinner material. Now, it's very similar to what I just showed you with this process there, folks. And I'm hoping if we take a little break, our neighbor will put their dog up and we'll have some nice quiet videos so we can complete this thing. So y'all hang tight, I will be right back. So we made some really good progress. Come down here and check out what we've done, folks. Now that's what quality fiberglass work should look like. Quite transparent, bubble free. You've staggered or staged the layers. We're overlapping. Everything is working our way forward. Now, again, if you're new to the channel, you may not have seen in previous episodes of our project boat where we were actually installing the stringers, some of the other stringers, and measuring and cutting and fitting those. But it's a pretty simple measure. Like when we're replacing these, I want to show like what you can do with the original stringers before you cut them out. A lot of times we'll just mark them in 1 foot increments, and then we measure down from the top of the stringer, and we'll put a measurement. For example, that one was 11 inches. This one was 11 1/8. This one was 11 1/4. It's a simple matter of transferring those measurements to either marine plywood, or in this case, again, we use Coosa board, which is my go-to material. It's what we used when we were building our 29 footer there in the background. Very light in weight compared to some woods, rot free, never will rot. So the boat that this boat isn't gonna be a lifetime type boat. It will be around for a long time. Really, really, really good stuff. So as you can see, we've made good progress and we're just continuing to move forward. Now I have mixed another batch, and as you move up here into the front, it can get a little bit trickier to position yourself, but I found that having a little plywood base or something to work off of. We just finished bubble busting. Remember to keep your roller in the acetone bucket wet ahead of where you're going to be laying glass. You can see we stopped right there. We're going to work our way all the way right on up to the front and transition. And this boat is going to be substantially stronger than it was originally. That's the way our family's always built heavy duty work boats and fishing boats. I like 3 layers of 1708 as kind of my go-to. It's probably a little bit overkill, especially considering how strong the Coosa board is. Coosa has a lot of strength within itself. You may get away with a little bit less, but I would say go ahead and spend a little bit of time, a little bit of money, and add that additional layer or 2 just to be 100%. Now, if you were using a lightweight core, something like the Venicell, which I don't typically recommend for stringers. I like something either marine plywood or Coosa because there's so much strength in the material itself. But I would recommend probably adding more layers than 3 if you're using a lightweight foam core. Just my opinion based on my experience. But here we go, 1 more layer. Now we're gonna run this one all the way up to the front. And all we're doing again is just butting that up. And what we're going to do is going to offset this just a little bit. As we go to the front, I'm going to kind of skew it a little bit so it just runs down off of the stringer. And I'm probably going to trim that back a little bit, which any quality scissors, these are Fiskar brand scissors. I want to put something comparable that would work in our on our Amazon store for you folks. Quite easy to cut if you've never dealt with fiberglass before. Like cutting just a heavy fabric material. Obviously you can see that we're wearing a Tyvek suit tonight. That's definitely going to help keep some of the potential resin and glass fibers off of your good clothes. And I know you folks have been following the channel. This is regular stuff, but I'm I'm pretty excited to get to this phase. This is the last layers on the last stringer. So we will be moving right on to foam flotation and floors and fuel tanks and that kind of stuff. So that's a big deal. I'm excited. I'm excited to have this phase done. I'm always looking for content suggestions, folks. So anybody that's been following the channel, if you have any ideas or suggestions for content, always happy to hear from you folks. A lot of times we do just whatever comes along in the shop or whatever's next on our project boat, but it's always good to hear from you folks that are following and watching both nationally and internationally. We want to welcome everybody to the channel. I had a lot of people here lately from Australia been commenting a lot, so welcome to the channel, everybody from Australia and other countries as well. So all right, so we're again just kind of more of the same. You can see that one has gone down really nice, really easy. If you've done your prep work, fiberglass work can be quite enjoyable, and it should go fairly easy. The brush is fantastic for working it down into those little grooves and crevices. But remember, folks, don't let it make you crazy. Sometimes people, again, they really expect too much, and you wouldn't believe some of the work that I've seen in factory built boats, name brand boats, and you open the floors up, quality of workmanship is not that great. This boat, probably a perfect example of that. The way we're rebuilding this thing is head and shoulders above and better what was here originally. And this floor and transom and stringer we're doing will last a lifetime and then some. All right, so that one looks pretty good. Always, again, like to wet a little bit more above and beyond for that next coat. Plenty of resin underneath is going to make your job easier. And got our piece right here ready for us to go. We're going to abut right up to that layer. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I love it. We're not going to run it. I'm kind of biasing it down into the hull rather than coming over the top of the stringer. That would just be additional work. We would have to sand or trim that. I don't see any reason to do that. We'll just let it run down into the hull and add a little additional strength and material up here, especially in the bow where the boat is really going to be making impact with the waves, and if you're beaching the boat or potentially hitting anything, right up in here is going to be where it's going to take the brunt of it. So we may even add some additional layers and some cross members once we start finishing things up. We're going to have to do some little cross members and petitions in here to hold our fuel tank or our fuel cell in place. By the time it's all tied together, this thing is going to be crazy strong. Woo! All right, folks. That is about where we need to be. Looking pretty good. We ran our glass all the way up to the front. At this point, we've got matching overlaps. We've kind of doubled up there in the middle, and when we come back into the fuel tank, we may add an additional strip or two, but I am pretty pleased with that. Maybe we can pan down the length of this thing and just see what you should expect. Now, we have started, I was kind of feeling back here, I know sometimes we get a lot of questions about tacking off or what are we looking for. Like right now, when I touch that we did first, that is not coming off on my gloved hand. So this material has already started to what I call tack off, which is about perfect. We're getting curing back here, but we still had plenty of time to work. Now, one thing you can do, now you got to be cautious and careful doing this, but being that we are going into wintertime and we're working with cooler weather, you can come in here prior to going home or finishing up your glass work. And sometimes we will send a little bit of warmth, little bit of heat, but you want to monitor that. You want to monitor that very carefully. You don't want to get carried away with it. You want to constantly be moving. And I have the little infrared heat gun that we use to kind of monitor it as we go. And once it starts to tack off a bit, like what we got there in the back, generally it's going to be good even if the temperatures start to drop significantly. So once we start to get curing and a chemical reaction, we can kind of feel pretty good about it curing overnight. And again, folks, if you're new to the channel and want to see multiple videos of us replacing the transom, floor, stringers, lots of the repairs we've done on this boat in depth, or if you even want to see us document the build of our 29-footer there in the background, that was kind of really the start of our channel. And a lot of people that are new had no idea all that's been documented. So folks, I want to thank y'all so much. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a small thing for you, but it's a big thing for us. If you don't mind, again, hit that subscribe button, like, share, comment, tell a friend. Be sure to check out Fiberglass Warehouse. Use your Fish Bump TV discount code to save you a bunch of money. Check out our Amazon store below our video's description. And for anyone who needs one-on-one consulting or help with their personal project, you can contact me through Patreon, and we can schedule an appointment and I can walk you through your project and give you direct answers to your problems you may have. So once again, thank you so much, everyone. My son Logan working hard behind the scenes. Captain Joe here, Island Marine Charters, Fish Bump TV. And we'll catch you folks in the next episode.